Esteemed colleagues, we turn now to the chronometer of the New Testament, the specific temporal delimiters that serve as the guardrails for all sound prophetic interpretation. It is a peculiar habit of modern evangelicalism to read the descriptions of events with hyperliteralism while treating the time frame of those events with absolute elasticity. Yet as responsible exegetes, we must contend that the when of prophecy is just as inspired as the what. We must look squarely at the time texts, phrases such as this generation, shortly, at hand, and quickly. These are not throwaway remarks or hopeful thinking. They are divine timestamps intended to ground the expectations of the original audience. To ignore them is to unmoor the text from history. The most formidable of these is undoubtedly found in the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus solemnly affirms, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled." The debate surrounding the Greek word gen-ea in Matthew 24:34 has been the source of much desperate hermeneutical gymnastics. We see well-meaning scholars attempt to redefine this word to mean race, confusing it with genos, or to suggest it refers to a qualitative type of wicked people. Even more creatively, some propose it refers to that future generation which sees the beginning of the signs, a generation thousands of years removed from the disciples. But this collapses under the weight of biblical usage. Every other use of this generation in the Gospels refers unambiguously to the contemporaries of Jesus, the very people who rejected him, the evil and adulterous generation upon whom the blood of all the prophets would be poured out. When Jesus spoke to his disciples on the Mount of Olives, pointing to the temple that stood before them, and said, "This generation," he meant exactly what any listener would assume the people living at that time. To suggest otherwise is to turn the plainest speech into a riddle. This generation did not pass away until the Roman armies obliterated the temple in AD 70, fulfilling every sign Jesus predicted within the 40-year biblical window of a generation. We must also grapple with the temporal bookends of the apocalypse. Revelation opens and closes with the urgent declaration that the events therein must take place shortly, entache, and that the time is at hand, angegus. Critics often attempt to neutralize these words by appealing to 2 Peter 3:8, with the Lord one day is as 1,000 years, arguing that God's time is different from ours. While this verse beautifully describes God's patience and his transcendence over time, it is illegitimate to use it as a hermeneutical solvent to dissolve specific time indicators. If shortly can mean 2,000 years or more, then language has lost all objective meaning, and God cannot be trusted to communicate clearly. When God told Noah he had 120 years, it meant 120 years. When he told Israel they would be captive for 70 years, it meant 70 years. Why then, when he tells the 7 churches of Asia Minor that their tribulation is at hand, do we feel the liberty to tell them he actually meant millennia? Consider the cruelty of a futurist interpretation of these time texts. If the book of Revelation was intended for a generation 20 centuries in the future, of what use was it to the suffering Christians under Nero or Domitian to whom it was addressed? They were promised a blessing for reading and keeping the words of the prophecy because the time is near. If that time was not near, the promise was hollow, some object that the Greek word tachos refers not to the nearness of the event, but to the rapidity of the action once it begins, that the events will unfold quickly whenever they eventually happen. But this fails to account for the parallel phrase at hand, which is a term of temporal proximity, not velocity. Just as John the Baptist cried, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand," meaning it was arriving immediately, Revelation cries that the judgment is at hand. Therefore, we must conclude that the integrity of Christ and the apostles is bound up in the faithful fulfillment of these time texts. We are not awaiting the destruction of Jerusalem. It has happened. We are not looking for the great tribulation to break out. It was the crucible of the first century church. By honoring the when of Scripture, we vindicate the sovereignty of God over history. He did exactly what he said he would do, exactly when he said he would do it. This realization should not lead to disappointment that we missed the end times, but rather to a robust confidence in the victory of Christ, who has already judged the harlot, married the bride, and is currently reigning until all enemies are put under his feet.